Dilan stands beside his teacher in front of the class as she introduces him. Class, this is Dilan Johnson, and he's going to be joining us for the rest of the school year, Miss Beverly says. Emily raised her hand and stands up to ask Miss Beverly a question. Miss Beverly, this is the school, not a costume party. I think he should be in a different location. Don't you think so? Emily says while laughing and pointing at Dilan. Emily, stop it. Miss Beverly says. Don't mind her. There's an empty seat beside BC, Miss Beverly adds, pointing to the back of the class. Thank you, ma'am, Dilan says as he moves to his seat. When Dilan sits down beside BC, BC tells him not to mind Emily and that she acts that way because her dad is a millionaire. Dilan is intrigued and asks BC why Emily doesn't go to a private school since she's from a rich background. I heard her father wanted to humble her, but clearly it's not working, BC says as they stare at Emily with raised eyebrows. Unknown to them, Emily hears their conversation and becomes angry. She turns and asks BC if she wants Dilan to take her to his helmet shop because she definitely needs one to cover up that all-knowing brain of hers. When the school bell rings, Emily quickly goes to the parking lot of her school, looking for her car. A male student from the science department approaches her. She gives him a dismissive look, but that doesn't drive him away. He gathers his courage and asks her to go out for lunch the next day after school. Emily laughs so hard and says, Do you have any designers? Well, if you can get even an original Gucci by tomorrow, then I'll think about it. Otherwise, just stay away from me. Emily watches in satisfaction as he bends his head and leaves in disappointment. Meanwhile, Dilan has been watching them from afar. Dilan later approaches Emily and tells her to learn to be kind and that money isn't everything. But Emily smirks as she says, You don't expect me to take advice from a helmet boy, right? Emily points to a bike, making fun of Dilan that he rides a bike while she brags about her ride an SUV. Immediately, a Ferrari pulls up at the school and steals everyone's attention. The driver opens the door for Dilan and he enters. Emily is in shock. She can't close her mouth as she watches the car drive away. Back at Dilan's house, he meets his father, Mr. Boris, sitting in the lounge waiting for him. He asks Dilan if he had found a girl, but Dilan pays no attention to him. He reminds Dilan that he knows what is at stake, but isn't taking it seriously. Mr. Boris is sick and has a few days to live. He has 2 children, Dilan, the supermodel billionaire son, and Rose, his eldest daughter, who knows everything about the company. Mr. Boris is scared of the current VP, Mr. Tobias, who is secretly convincing the board members to vote for him as the new CEO. Mr. Boris fears that after he dies, his legacy will be gone. He urges Dilan to get engaged early because the board will respect him more. Later that night, Rose walks into Dilan's room and reminds him of the school outing coming up, telling him it is a good idea to find a bride. The next day, while Dilan is removing a book from his locker, he sees many guys at school asking the girls out on a date. He feels nervous but walks up to a pretty girl at school called Beauty and asks her on a date. But she gives him a disgusted look and says, You're not my type. Dilan stands there confused. Just as Beauty is moving away, Emily comes out of nowhere and removes Dilan's helmet, catching him off guard. The hallway is filled with gasps as everyone sees that the helmet boy is actually the handsome, rich supermodel. All the girls surround Dilan, asking him to take them on a date. Even Beauty asks him to go on a date with her. Dilan is fed up with the attention, so he leaves while Emily stands beside her locker, watching everything with a smirk on her face. After school, when Dilan returns home, his dad asks him to get dressed as the family has to follow him to visit a colleague. A few minutes later, they leave home and head to Mr. Boris's friend's house. As soon as Dilan enters the living room, he is shocked to see Emily sitting on the couch with a broad smile on her face. When they all sit down at the dining table, Mr. Boris introduces Emily to Dilan as his future wife if he fails to find a fiancé in 2 weeks. There is tension in the room. Dilan looks frustrated because he has nothing in common with Emily, while Emily keeps smiling at the thought of getting married to a billionaire's son. On the day of the outing, Dilan enters the hall and all the girls chase after him. He hides in different locations to run away from them until he hides in the garden house of the building. There, he sees BC concentrating on the book. They look up and see each other, exchange greetings and sit next to each other. Dilan is happy because for the first time he meets someone who shares his interests and doesn't care or know about who he is. BC reads her stories to Dilan in the garden house and tells him how nature inspires her to write more. Over the next few days, Dilan and BC grow closer than ever. They share everything from food to small romantic gestures, love notes and pecks. Along the way, Dilan asks BC to be his girlfriend and she accepts. With time, he visits BC's mother's home and makes great connection with her family, while Emily watches them with anger in the canteen every day. The big day finally arrives when Dilan brings BC to his home to meet his father. They all sit on the couch and Mr. Boris starts a conversation with BC. He asks her about her aspirations and her parents' jobs, and he makes some harsh comments about her. He tells her it is not logical for her to come from a poor background and decide to become a writer in the future. He further stresses that Dilan should never see her again. BC is heartbroken, embarrassed and disappointed as she runs in the rain, while Dilan goes to his room, unable to defend her, feeling very sad and restless. In the days that follow, the company makes preparations for their annual party. At this party, the current VP, Mr. Tobias, plans to steal the company from Mr. Boris. When the event starts, Rose sits at the far end wearing a modest outfit. No one could ever think that her father is Mr. Boris. A lady sits beside Rose and introduces herself as the president of Fizzy, a company that uses harmful chemicals to create its products. This lady keeps talking about how she is a partner of Mr. Boris's company, all thanks to the VP, Mr. Tobias. They have a budding relationship and she gives him a 10% cut every month. Rose is furious but decides to gather more evidence before confronting the board. Quietly, she snaps receipts of the president of Fizzy sending money to the VP, Mr. Tobias, every month, and also snaps a copy of the contract that Fizzy signed with her father's company. When the event starts, Mr. Boris introduces Dilan to the board members and staff as the new CEO and his fiancée Emily. Dilan is furious, so he storms out of the event and his father follows him. Dilan tells his father that he can't marry Emily because he loves BC so much and has no interest in joining the company. He further insists that Rose is more than qualified for the job. When Dilan arrives at BC's house, she asks him what he's doing at her house and why he isn't with his fiancée Emily. Dilan tells her that he left everyone at the meeting because he can't stand being apart from her. They hug, kiss and make up. BC then urges Dilan to take her to the party so they can convince Mr. Boris to give Rose the CEO position. On their way to the venue, Mr. Tobias gathers the attention of the board members. He urges them to appoint him as the new CEO. Before he can say another word, Dilan and BC storm into the event. Dilan says Rose is perfect for the CEO position. Mr. Tobias laughs and asks the board if Rose has done anything for the company. One by one, the board members list everything Rose has done for the company and select her as their choice for the new CEO. Mr. Tobias tries to protest, but Rose brings evidence of him receiving money from the president of Fiji. The board members are shocked, and at the end of the day, Rose becomes the new CEO. Her father gets better and becomes the new VP, and Dilan and BC live happily in love.